Come back with that interview. Wilson Sosion, NAS Secretary General, joining us in studio. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. You were part of the meeting today that came up with resolutions on this particular calendar announced by the CS. How did we arrive at January 4th? What were some of the indicators for that?
Yeah, there wasn't any indicator you are aware about the State of the Nation address by the head of state, His Excellency the President, and he made it very clear that all schools, all learners should resume school by 4th of January, and therefore the minister was directed to release the school calendar within 14 days. So our major undertaking today was to help the Cabinet Secretary develop consensus on the calendar, the school calendar, with effect from January 2021, which we've done, and we've looked into the calendar for up to even 2023, because we've got to take the school curriculum and the school calendar back to normal. Earlier on, if we had opened in the month of October, we would have normalized by December 2021. But this is going to take a little bit longer so that we ensure that there are no double intakes and congestions that can affect facilities, and learners don't need to repeat, and they have to catch up with the time.
Even as we talk about that, looking at the situation right now, November looking like Kenya's darkest month yet as far as COVID-19 is concerned, perhaps did we have any supporting data that maybe by January things will be under control? What were we basing this on in line with the COVID-19 situation?
I think this is what Kenyans need to know. The decision to reopen schools is indeed final and definitive, because look at what the global community is doing. Even go to Europe, countries that are getting back to lockdown. They are getting back to lockdown with the exception of schools. And therefore, schools have been given the prime priority, because we cannot keep children forever out of schools. So regardless of the trend of the virus, even in January, because we don't know until there's a vaccine to stop this disease, then all learners should come back to school in January. And look at the UK, everywhere has been locked down except schools. So the premium of protection and an entity that is allowed to operate globally and is a new trend is allowing schools to operate. So in this circumstance, the reopening of schools shall disregard the trend of the disease. We are in the darkest stage at the moment, and we are seeing several deaths, several admissions and infections in schools. But then that notwithstanding, the school should open. We must learn to live with the virus. We cannot keep children out of school. It doesn't mean that schools are centers of infection. Already there is a wild spread of the disease within the communities. And therefore, what we discussed today is important that I share with you. The safety of schools remain a primary priority to ensure that schools are safe. And there is need to ensure that the strict protocols that have been proposed by the Ministry of Health are enforced, particularly ensuring that every learner has a mask. And we have recommended that the government should provide. This one we should not debate about it. And I think there has been debate that it is parents to do it. But we've given a recommendation, and we'll be making those strong follow-up as a union that the learners must be provided with masks. And also safety of teachers. We have seen the last 3 weeks, the lessons of the last 3 weeks is that the number of deaths has really affected teachers. And probably today, we have seen the first student getting affected. So with reference to teachers, it is important that their safety is considered.
And we'll get to that shortly. Let me just cut you short. I'm glad you mentioned the health protocols and that, you know, as a union and other stakeholders, you've urged the government to ensure masks and all that. But is there a concrete corresponding funding plan by the government? for next year.
That is now the next frontier of our arguments. And our experience for the last 3 weeks is that the primary school was not given even a single cent for preparations. And the information we are getting from the primary schools is that the learners came to school without masks. So even to train them on the simple safety protocol measures is a tall order, is a difficult task. The secondary schools, the 500 that was wired to school for this purpose is inadequate. And school management, they've had to engage in environment of resources from other votates to come to the same. This country, there has been a huge kitty of COVID in the emergency response network. If, as a country, we cannot avail basic safety, personal equipment for learners and teachers, then there is nothing we are doing. We hasten to state that the capitation for tuition and other expenditure shall not be a priority. Capitation for textbook shall not be a priority, but deliberate availability of funding to provide basic personal protective equipment is necessary. Countries in Africa that whose economy is far much inferior to ours have been able to buy masks and the necessary basic equipment, and learning is going on normally. Some of this spiking of diseases that we are seeing in schools probably could be is because of inadequate implementation of health protocol measures, particularly masks. When we are talking about providing a mask of 35 shillings to every learner, or 2 masks of 70 shillings to every learner in this country, it means a simple budget of 1 billion shillings for every 3 months. I don't think we'll be asking for too much. So for reopening of schools in January, there are a number of things that must be done. 1, avail the mask. 2, avail funding to ensure that our children and teachers are protected. There is no choice about it, because if we don't do that, as we've seen, the spikes of viruses in school, when you have so many learners getting infected, that tells us we've really not implemented the necessary safety protocols.
And I'd like us to continue with this conversation, Mr. Sossion. We're coming back from the break. I'll let you finish your point then. I'd like us to take a quick commercial break. Remember, we're asking you what your thoughts are on the new calendar. Text us 22155, tweet us at Akisa Wandera at KTN News KE, hashtag to use as KTN Prime. And of course, any questions you have for Mr. Sossion.